With the rise of video games in the last couple of years, many people wonder, has video games caused aggression to kids? Now this includes violence, fighting, verbal language, anything. And shortly answer this, no. But for the long-term answers explain why, we have to kind of focus on its origin of these theories. Now, the earliest example is probably with the Columbine shooting, in which the shooter was very isolated, had distance with most of his classmates, but what many people focused on was the video games, and say that he was a video gamer and, well, he focused mainly on playing games instead of hanging out with people, so they were quick to target the video games. Now, this is very similar to probably the 70s to the 80s period, where people would often criticize rock and roll as being demon music. In fact, in the 50s, people would often accuse jazz of being evil, like in this clip right here.
These men come down here from New York and from Florida to find out my reasons on rock and roll music and why I preach against it, and I believe with all of my heart that it is a contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today. I 100% believe it. Why I believe that is because I know how it feels when you sing it. I know what it does to you. And I know the evil feeling that you feel when you sing it.
As you can see, people started scapegoating other things on basic teenage behavior a while back, and the medium has constantly changed. This is a term called scapegoating, in which multiple people blame one subject that's almost unrelated as kind of a cause and effect. It originated when people used to put their metaphorical sins onto a goat and, well, send it out to die. That's where the term scapegoat comes from, and it's become very popular today, and many more have grown. Especially during 2012, during the showing of The Dark Knight Rises, in which case there was a shooting, multiple people would jump to the conclusion, and from research done, that he was a video game player, and saying that that was the reason he caused the shooting. Now, why exactly do adults believe in video game violence affecting our youth? Well, from Jane Levine, author of Lessons We've Learned from Society, states that when adults think about video games, the image they see usually involves violent ones, because many people are preconditioned by media to assume a casual link between violence and video games. Stories about cooperative or innocent video games aren't controversial, so they don't result in spikes in readership, comments, or ad sales. So as you see, it's mainly a ploy to also help get readers invested into their articles. But now let's look at the coup de grace, the child's effect of playing video games, in which case multiple essays point out that cause psychological problems to children causing violent tendencies. But let's look at the brain and see what goes on with it that causes, well, these addiction to video games. Now, dopamine is a function in the brain, kind of a neurotoxin that's released that gives you a sense of pleasure. This happens with gambling or when you're drunk in basketball. It's a positive feeling that's released into your head. Now, dopamine is also released when you figure out a problem in a video game or defeat that boss that you've been grinding up for. It's something that releases in your brain that makes you feel better. And so you feel better, you feel more inclined to play more, such as it works with gambling. When you win, dopamine is released in your head, and you want to play more, even though you might lose a lot. In the article, Video Game Addiction Is It Real? By Sarah Blum in the Drugs and Health blog, she compares dopamine and how it affects children in the addictive level. And she points out the positives of dopamine, saying that dopamine bursts also reward you when you apply your cleverness in solving to real-world problems. And encouragement to video games with its encouraging help to solving problems and figuring things out. Now, she also does point out the addiction and when you should draw the line with playing video games. She says, but if you play a game too much and you don't participate in normal life activities, you don't sleep or eat or hang out with your friends or do things you used to love, you're heading down a dangerous path. If that describes you, maybe you should try not playing the game for a day or two, or even a week. Ask people that you trust, and if they think you have a problem. And if you find that you can't stop, even if video gaming addiction isn't officially a disease, you can absolutely get help by talking to your parents or guidance counselor at school. See, it can be a problem when it needs to, but you have to learn to know when it hits a problem, like multiple problems. This is probably most likely why the Columbine shooting happened. The kid was antisocial. He had nothing else. But if you are healthy and have a positive environment to be a part of outside of the games, you will be fine. Now, what's the causal link between the two? Throughout many research, it's proven that, well, there's too many variables to be mixed in with the bunch. As seen in The Benefits of Playing Video Games by Isabel Garnick, Adam Loeb, and Rutger CMT Ingalls. In fact, when doing the research and viewing that video games are violent, they determined that there's too many factors to determine this, mainly from Rutger CMT Ingalls, in which he stated, these cognitive enhancements are likely a product of fast-paced demands that require split-second decisions, making an acute attention to unpredictable changes in context. These assumptions, however, remain somewhat speculative because the vast majority of video games include an enormous number of game mechanics intertwined, rendering specific hypothesis testing about those mechanisms extremely difficult. Or, however, it is virtually impossible to choose an appropriate control condition within all aspects of a game and keep constant across conditions. Only one cognitive challenge is manipulated. But let's continue to look at the positives. According to Isabel Garnick, in the same article, she states that the positive function of play has been running theme for some time. It is respected scholars in the field, e.g. Erickson 1977, Page in 1962, Vygotsky 1978. Erickson proposed the play consists allow children to experiment with social experiments and simulate alternate emotional consequences, which can bring out feelings of resolution outside of the play context. Similarly, Pagan theorized that make-believe play provides children opportunities to reproduce real-life conflicts, to work out resolutions for their own pleasure, and emulate negative feelings. Both Pagan and Vygotsky expose strong theoretical links between play and a variety of elements that foster the development of social cognition. Now, this proves that video games are helpful because it helps develop these skills. And also, good old Ruther also stated, finally, video games seem to be associated with additional cognitive benefit, enhanced creativity. New evidence is emerging that any kind of video game, regardless of whether it's violence, enhances children's creative capabilities. For example, among a sample of 500 12-year-old students, video game play was positively associated with creativity. So in conclusion, video games do not cause aggression amongst kids. This is mainly creation by newspapers or other organizations as kind of a fear-mongering tactic. And it causes more positives because it helps with creativity and it helps solve real-world applications. So next time your neighbor is criticizing you for letting your kid play video games, show them the facts. Don't just jump to conclusions. Point out the facts that it's positively impacting your child's brain, both creatively and mentally.